What's up, Naja here, and I'm here to show you guys early access footage of Hugo Vlad. Hugo is part of the second half of the 1.7 banner, right after Vivian. Just before I go into my thoughts and first impressions of the character, I just want to note that all footage is recorded on the Zenless Zone 0 creator experience server. Anyways, guys, let's just get straight into it. Alright, so first things first, I just want to show off his animations, as I always do. His animations are pretty cool, I'd say. One of the best looking characters. I'll show that again. And let's get into some of the other ones. But yeah, why does he look like Edward Elric? So on the base stat screen, as you can see, he is part of the Mockingbird faction, just like Vivian, obviously. He's an attack ice element, and he scales off of crit and attack. Moving on to his core skill, I do want to just go into this real fast because it is a lot. The main thing you want to take away is that when he goes into his chain attack, he gains 12% more crit rate and 25% more crit damage. When there's 1 or 2 stunners, he gains more attack, 300 and 900 respectfully. And the main gimmick of his kit is something called Totalize. Now, what Totalize is that when an enemy is stunned, when Hugo uses his EX special attack or his ultimate, his finishing move will trigger Totalize. And Totalize will multiply the finishing hit by 1,000 or more, depending on how much stun is left on the enemy, up to a max of 3,400. After Hugo triggers the Totalize effect, the enemy's stun state will end immediately, and based on the remaining stun time at the moment Totalize is triggered, a certain amount of days will be accumulated. At max, you can only have like 25%, so when you use Totalize, at most, the enemy will be dazed up to 25% again. Basically, it's a nuke. You stun the enemy, you go into Hugo, you use either his EX special or his ultimate, and it nukes the enemy for a certain amount of damage and takes it out of the stun. Pretty cool. It does a really big amount of damage. He also gains some energy back from using his Totalize on the enemy after using an EX special. He also has a 4-hit combo. After the 4th hit of his basic attack combo, he can use a charged basic attack, which I'll show later. You can do some really cool combos with Hugo, and I think he's going to be a pretty fun character to play as. I'll quickly hover over all of his skills, but I really do think that the meat and potatoes of his kit is the core skill. This is what the upgrade suggestion is. Definitely think core skills on top. Hugo's EX special and his ultimate, that's where his Totalize can be triggered, and that's where all the damage is. So you should definitely upgrade those 2 skills. All right, so moving on to his equipment. This can get a little messy. You can run a variety of different drive discs. This is what I've kind of ended up on, but there's a lot of other options that could be really good. So I am using a 4-piece Hormone Punk and a 2-piece Woodpecker Electro. The reason I'm using a 4-piece Hormone Punk is for the massive amount of attack percentage he gets after switching in. Since you want to stun the enemy and then switch it to Hugo and Totalize the enemy, this drive set's really good for a burst damage type of playstyle. Now, if you wanted to play Hugo more on field, because maybe you have like 2 different stunners that don't want to be on field as much, like Trigger, like Ultra, like Lighter, you could run a 4-piece Woodpecker Electro, which also increases the equipper's attack by 9% and also gives you a passive 8% crit rate. Crit rate is super important on Hugo, and I'll get into that in a second. For disc 4, I have crit damage. You should be going for crit rate. If you're not able to reach the crit rate threshold, I highly recommend going crit rate. I'm able to hit the crit rate threshold, so that's why I'm on a crit damage drive. Onto disc 5, I'm using an ice damage bonus. You can also use an attack bonus if you have better substats. For disc 6, you should definitely just be going for attack, and for substats, obviously crit rate, crit damage, and then attack. The most important thing I want to note is that you want to hit a certain crit rate threshold. At this current moment, I have 87.4. What you want to reach is 88%. This is close enough. I'll take it. And so the reason you want to hit 88% is because you get a passive 12% crit rate bonus from switching in and using Hugo Vlad's chain attack, which virtually gives you 100% when switching into Hugo. That means that his Totalize will always crit. Now, this threshold can be lowered to 76% if you have his Mindscapes Cinema 1. His Mindscapes Cinema 1 gives you crit rate and crit damage, an additional 12% crit rate, and an additional 30% crit damage. So if you were building Hugo and you had his M1, 76% crit rate would net you a 100% crit rate. After that, obviously going for crit damage as much as you can. Moving on to his W engine choices, obviously his best W engine is his own W engine, his signature W engine, Myriad Eclipse. This W engine is pretty crazy. Not only does it give you 20% more crit rate, it also gives you 45% more crit damage. And when using EX special attack or a chain attack or an ultimate to deal ice damage, you basically gain 25% defense ignore, which ignoring 25% of the defense is a lot. If you stack that with someone like Lighter, you ignore a lot of defense. Here's his overclocked 5 version if you want to see that. 72% crit damage and 40% ignore. That is crazy. You're ignoring 40% of the enemy's defense. That is so much. Yeah, 25% is also a big margin. I kind of skipped over alternative disk drives. I forgot to mention that. So 4-piece sets, Hormone Punk or Woodpecker Electro. For 2-piece sets, either Woodpecker Electro or you can use the Branch and Blade Song disk drive, as the 2-piece gives you 16% more crit damage, and you can also use Polar Metal. I suggest using Branch and Blade Song if you're able to hit the thresholds and you don't need crit rate. All right, so back to his W engines, other than his main signature W engine, an alternative can be Ellen's signature W engine, as it also increases ice damage by 25%, gives you a 24% crit rate bonus, and plus 10% more crit rate when you land a basic attack. And so you have a 34% crit rate bonus with Ellen's W engine, which lowers the threshold for reaching 100% of Hugo's crit rate. Super, super nice. I don't think you'll be consistently able to activate the dash attack for Hugo. I don't even know if he has a dash attack. So this part, the extra 10% from that, is not viable. But still, 34% crit rate plus a 25% more ice damage. Pretty nice. Another W engine you can use is Soldier 11's signature W engine if you're running something more on field. If you're running Hugo more on field, I highly suggest it, as that it does really well on field, and it boosts Hugo's attack by a lot. For the A rank options, I highly suggest using Mercado Desire. Mercado Desire is an event light cone, but if you have it and you have it at overclock 5, I highly recommend it. Not only does it give 20% more crit rate, but it also boosts attack by 6%, which Hugo really wants. The crit rate on it's really nice. You can also use Gilded Blossom, as it boosts your attack by a significant amount as well. There is no crit rate, so you will have to run a crit rate disk drive for sure. And the third one I recommend is Street Superstar, as it also gives a lot of attack. Not only does it give a lot of attack, but it also gives a lot of ultimate damage, so it's pretty nice. But yeah, that's it for the W engines. All right, and I'm just gonna quickly show off the stat screen again, and let's get into the combat showcase. All right, so I am here in the VR training room, and as you can see, this W engine glow, he does have glowy hair, and his scarf does glow a little bit. Looks pretty cool. And as you just saw before I canceled it, he does have an idle animation. I'll wait for it to show up again. There it is. A little coin flip, pretty cool. All right, and so I'm gonna quickly go over his basic attack because it's really cool, and you can do some really cool combos with it, because if you play him as an on-field agent, you'll need to learn these combos. So after using 4 basic attacks, you'll do one of the spinning things with the scythe here, and then when you hold your left click, you'll charge up an attack, and then you can also follow that up with another charge attack right after. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then charge your attack, and then you can go back again and charge it again. Something that's really cool about that is you can actually combo that into other things. So if you were to do his basic attack and go into his charge attack, you can actually hit your EX special and do a charge attack again, and then do another charge attack, and then into another EX special, into a charged attack. So there's a lot of combos going on there. As you can probably tell, the last part of his attack is a separate basic attack combo, which can be applied to anything else you do. So when you use an EX special or you use an ultimate, you can use the charged attack I just showed. So when I use an EX special, you can use the charge attack, and then you can use it again. Same thing with his ultimate, which I'll show off right here. And then you use his charged attack, and once again. And so you can go into these really cool combos, going EX special, into your charged attack, into another charged attack, into your ultimate, into a charged attack, into another charge, and then rinse and repeat. He's got a lot of combos, pretty cool. Now you might be wondering, why do I have Lycon and Lighter on my team? That's because you want to stun the enemy as much as possible. And the reason you want to stun the enemy as much as possible is obviously because of Total Eyes, thing I talked about earlier. Yeah, so when I stun the enemy here, I'm going to chain into Lighter, and then chain into Hugo. And then when I use my EX special here, he will use something called Total Eyes. So there it is, and bam, 1.8 million damage with Total Eyes. As you can see, he has 25% of his daze bar filled, and he's back into action. And so yeah, Hugo is very reliant on stun windows, but you can also kind of play him out of stun windows if you want to play him longer. So another thing that's actually pretty cool, another interaction that I think is really nice, is that when you're really close to actually stunning the enemy, which I'll get him close here, you can switch into Hugo, and when you use your EX special and stun him, you can actually totalize the enemy from stun range. So if you were playing on-field Hugo, you can still totalize the enemy before the stun window even starts. And yeah, that's pretty straightforward. The thing with Lighter is you want to get his stacks up there and then switch into Lycon, as he is the main stunner, and then stun the enemy. And then you want to make sure you chain into Hugo Vlad. Here's Lighter, and then here's Hugo. And if you use the ultimate, it'll also do the totalize effect at the end, as you can see at the end of this. Bam, totalized. Whoa, 2.1 million. Oh my god. Now, this is what I believe is the best team currently, and I'll kind of get into that later. But let's go and show him off in some weekly special bosses and maybe Shiyu defense. Let me show off his running animation too. That's it. There's his dodge. Yeah, that's about it. All right, so what I have here is Lighter, Lycon, and Hugo, and I'm gonna use the Robin Bang Boo. If you guys want to know what the Robin Bang Boo does, I'm just gonna hover over what this says. You can pause here and read it yourself, and yeah, let's just get straight into it. Now, this is just one of his teams. I do like running double stun with him. You can also run Astra Yao with this team comp. You would just switch out one of the stunners. Let me go in here. I'm gonna get 20 stacks with Lighter here after using his EX special. Use the EX special again, and then getting 20 stacks here. He's gonna get damage, but I'm gonna switch into Lycon here and use the stun for Lycon. I don't know how I dodged that, but that's okay. And so, very close to stunning. I somehow got hit there, but that's okay. I'm gonna switch into Lighter. I'm gonna switch into Lycon, and then I'm gonna switch to Hugo last. And you're gonna see Hugo here do big damage. Using the EX special here, and it's dead. I didn't even... There's no number there because the enemy just dies. Now we wait for the enemy to come back. I should be going into Lycon here and actually getting some stacks of energy. Now I'm back in with Lighter again just to reset his buff. Switch into Lycon here. EX special. And the enemy should be stunned soon. I'm going to use his ultimate here. Boom, into Lighter, into Hugo, and then I'm just gonna use his EX special and kind of end the fight. Actually, I'm gonna use his ultimate and end the fight. And as you can see, that went from half health to dead. He is pretty broken, I'd say. Now, that wasn't perfect. You could probably do this a little faster, but as you can see, Hugo is really potent in damage. All right, so I'm just gonna show this team off against the Ballerina twins. Let's just get into it. I just want to show you guys another thing. A thing about these two is that you want to stun both of them pretty close to each other, because if you don't, you might kill one, and then the other one will just res. So I'm gonna switch to the Lycon here. I'm gonna focus the other Ballerina twin here and make sure they're pretty close in stun value. How am I getting hit by... Oh, God, dude. All right, so anyway, this is a little messy, but as you can see, I'm just going into Hugo here. Hugo has a cool combo, which I'm showing you guys right now. He does take damage from his combos still, so just be careful of that. All right, now they're in their invulnerable state, so I'm just gonna get hit, I guess. That's fine. Yeah, this is pretty fun. I love that all these bosses just go invulnerable. It's so much fun. So anyway, they're pretty close to being stunned here. I accidentally stunned one of them, but that's okay. I'm gonna go back into Lycon. You always want to end with a Hugo here. So the totalize effect here will do big damage. It might actually kill the Ballerina twin, which it did. And now the other one is stunned, which means... Or the other one was frozen, and now you want to stun the other one to make sure they do not res. Whoops. That's okay. They will not res here. Thank you. And then just same thing. You want to go in both your stunners here. Make sure the buffs are on, and then you will kill... I'm gonna use my ultimate for Flare. You don't have to. She'll just die anyway. Watch that. Bam. Hugo does massive damage. I do want to note that all characters do have their signature W engine, but they are all M0 as well. All right, and I do want to just show off an Astra and a Hugo team, just because I did say you could run a support with Vlad as well. You don't even need to use Lighter at all during this, but you probably should. But EX special here, everyone will be dead. Oh, the other one came out, so I come into Lighter here. Hugo. Here's the more on-field playstyle if you want to see it. Switch back in. Now, I'm going to use Lighter a little more just to get more stun value out of him. Switch it to Hugo, and I do want to use his ultimate. As you can see, the combos I do are crazy. Switching into Lighter here. And then I'm just going to use his ultimate. The stun will come out here. The thing about using an Astra Lighter team is that the stun will be a little later, and you only get one stun window, but the damage will be pretty high. Watch this. Going to Hugo here. When I use my EX special, it should be really big. Bam! 2 million. I'm going to go into Lighter here and do more stunning. Almost stunned again. There's the stun. Going to Hugo. Go into Lighter. Go into Astra. And this thing will die with Hugo's EX special here. yeah, pretty good. All right, now let's get into his teams. There's a lot of really good teams, and I do want to show that off, so let's just get straight into it. All right, and so I do have a lot of teams, as you can see, and I'm not going to talk about it too much in detail because they all kind of play the same. They all have 2 stunners or a stunner and a support. I do want to talk about certain compositions. Some of Hugo's best teams so far have been Lycon and Lighter. Lighter doesn't need to be in as much, and Lycon strives on being in a lot. In this composition specifically, Hugo can play a very off-field role and then only come in for burst windows, aka the stun window. The bursty type of playstyle is very comfy, and having 2 stunners makes it so you stun very fast. As you can see at this current moment, a lot of the teams are double stun teams for a reason. You want to stun the enemy. This Trigger Lighter team is also pretty cool. Trigger doesn't need to be on field as much, neither does Lighter, but you can have both of them on field just a little bit, and Hugo off field, but you can have Hugo on field a lot more if you want to as well. Something about this team, it can beat out the Lycon team if you have Trigger's M1 or her W engine, as she'll provide more buffs than Lycon would give. This is definitely the premium team, and one I highly recommend. Now, Qingyi also has a very high stun days multiplier. You can get up to like 230, 245% with Qingyi and Lighter, and the reason is because of Lighter's ice resistance and fire resistance reduction. The fact that he's able to give reduction down to the enemy, super nice. Lighter is definitely the best option for Hugo for that reason. Now, let's say you don't have Lighter. You could run Qingyi Trigger, you can run Lycon Trigger, you can even run Pultra. These are just some example teams. You can literally run any 2 stunners as long as you have 2 stunners. As I mentioned before, having 2 stunners gives you a 900 attack bonus to Hugo. I am using the Robin Bangbu. The Robin Bangbu is really good. That's all I gotta say. As you can see down here, you can even run Caesar if you really wanted to. So here are some of the free-to-play teams that I want to talk about, actually. There is the Lycon, Hugo, and then Pultra team. Pretty self-explanatory. Pultra builds days pretty fast with being off field and having aftershocks, which means that having Lycon on the field and Pultra at the same time means you're getting very effective value out of the days. Same thing with this other team with Caesar. Caesar provides a lot of utility buffs and can stun the enemy. And so I want to go with some of the free-to-play stun and support teams. As you can see, I'm running Lycon, Sokaku, and Hugo. I really like this team because it's so versatile, and you could switch out any of these characters if you really want to do. Instead of Sokaku, maybe you have Astra. Maybe you want to put Astra on the team. Well, if you put Astra on the team, it's just fine. You have Lycon, Astra, and then Hugo. And let's say maybe you don't have Astra and you maybe have Sokaku, which is fine. But let's say you don't have Lycon, but you do have Qingyi. You do have like maybe Koleda. Maybe you have Koleda instead. If you have Koleda, you'll have to switch out Sokaku and maybe use Lucy, which is also fine. I don't really recommend this composition, but it is a comp that you can't run. Let's say you only have Pultra though. You can run something like this, which is also fine. Or even this. Maybe you recently just rolled for Trigger, but you don't have Silver Soldier Anby. You could run Trigger, and then you could run Anby, Trigger, and Hugo. This team also works very good. They're double stun plus Hugo. Hugo just has a lot of options. Literally any of these work. Some are better than others, obviously. I think the Lycon Lighter team is the best team. I also think running something like Astra, Hugo, Lighter is fine. 1 stun, 1 support has been the gold standard for attack type DPS agents in the first place, so this has been working well ever since. But yeah, I mean, it's just literally anything works with this guy. Just whatever you have, you can just run with them and it'll probably be fine. I'll be so real. With his teams out of the way, let's just talk about his Mindscapes real fast. And now I did go over his M1 earlier in the video, but I'll go over it again. His M1, Child of Hatred, when triggering the totalize effect in the Dark Abyss reverb state, skill's crit rate is increased by an additional 12% and crit damage by 30%. Obviously super good. It lowers the threshold of what your crit rate needs to be. I said it before, 76% instead of 88%. Super nice, plus the 30% more crit damage. Onto the M2. This M2 is the Child Within. When Ultimate Blaspheme triggers totalize, it will not end the enemy's stun state. Additionally, when totalize is triggered, the skill will ignore 15% of the enemy's defense. Wow, the recent characters M2s have been so fucking broken. Like, it's just insane. The fact that you can trigger totalize and it won't end the enemy's stun state, plus totalize ignore 15% more of the defense. In this state, you'll be saving Hugo's ultimate just for the stun state, so you can get more out of the stun window. Something I'm kind of looking forward to is having agents in the future being able to delay the stun window. I know you can freeze the enemy, and freezing the enemy will delay the stun window already, but maybe there will be a character in the future that will delay the stun window even longer for Hugo to deal more damage. Super good. The M3, just skill increase. And now for the M4 Dramatic Theory. After a charged shot hits an enemy, Hugo's attack against that target will ignore 12% of the target's ice res. Now with this Mindscape, basically your rotation will change, and you'll be using a charged shot before M4 so you can get the Ice Res Ignore. It's pretty good, but I think that the M2 is a more dramatic change than the M4. The M5 obviously is just more skill upgrades, pretty nice. And then M6, Crown of Thorns, all shooting attacks that hit the enemies trigger the Dark Abyss reverb state, lasting up to 6 seconds, and repeated triggers reset the duration. Additionally, whenever any skill triggers the totalize effect, that damage is further increased by 60%. The finishing move of EX Special Attack, Soul Hunter Punishment, also triggers the totalize effect when hitting the enemy that isn't stunned, boosting the damage multiplier of the finishing move by a fixed 1000%. So the elephant in the room is the 1000% damage multiplier, which means totalize is now 2000%, a base 2000%. Not only is it a 2000% multiplier on your EX Special Finisher, but you can also totalize the enemy when it isn't stunned, which is like, what? Are you serious? This is actually one of the least loaded Mindscapes I've seen, but it's so good. It is so good. So all shooting attacks triggering the Dark Abyss reverb state. For anyone that's wondering, that just means that your crit rate and crit damage is increased, which means you'll have a permanent increase even on the field. It basically changes the playstyle into a more on-field agent, so if you're already thinking about playing Hugo more on-field, this is a really good Mindscape. But yeah, not ending the stun state with the ultimate means that you can use an ultimate, and then you can also use an EX Special and trigger Totalize, and after triggering the EX Special for Totalize, you can literally use the EX Special again if you have another EX Special and use Totalize again. If you do get the M6, you'll definitely have to learn Hugo's combos a lot more, but if you were at M0, you can definitely get away with not learning a single combo and just using Hugo off-field more often. Personally, I think getting Hugo's W engine is worth more than his Mindscapes, as his W engine is just super good. Crit rate 25%, 45 crit damage, and a 25% defense ignore. But I will say that if you are a Hugo Vlad main, or if you want to main Hugo Vlad, getting his M1 is definitely worth it. Even his M2. His M2 is also super worth it. Not ending the stun state and ignoring 15% more defense would just mean that Hugo does massive damage. And that's about it, everyone. Like I said earlier, Hugo is a very straightforward character. I absolutely love his kit and his design. He kind of looks like Edward Elric. I think I said that before. Yeah, I think he's just very versatile, and I definitely think that Hugo is up there with like Anby, Silver Soldier Anby, I mean, and other DPS agents. I don't think he falls behind at all. He actually might be ahead. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below, and I'll get to them when I can, and feel free to subscribe. It's free. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.